Welcome in, everybody. Josh here from 8-Bit Goonies, and I'm very excited about tonight's video. It is a classic film from one of the greatest directors of all time, and it has a lot of, influence in film, but it's very pertinent to today and today's issues in society, and I want to get into all of that. So, this is going to be maybe my longest video yet on my film docu-series of my 4K journey. Um, we're talking about Rope today. James Stewart in Alfred Hitchcock's Rope from 1948. Uh, we all know Psycho, right? I'd still say Psycho is my favorite Alfred Hitchcock film, but I need to revisit it. I haven't seen Psycho in 15 years, probably. It still holds a place in my mind, though. It's such a great movie. Um, I recently watched North by Northwest about 2 weeks ago. I hadn't seen that movie, boy, since TV when I was younger. So, really, really good movie. And then I saw that Rope was out on 4K. So I said, I got to get it. I went to my local JB Hi-Fi. They had a copy in, so I picked it up. I was very excited to watch it, and it didn't disappoint. Boy, let me tell you, this movie holds up. There's amazing film techniques here. Alfred Hitchcock was so ahead of his time. This is 1948. This movie is over 75 years old, coming up on 80 years old. This movie. It was his first Technicolor film, and it doesn't have Dolby Vision or Dolby Atmos. Honestly, it doesn't need it. It's even letterboxed on the sides, so it's not um your big wide 35 millimeter Lawrence of Arabia. It doesn't need to be. This is such an intimate movie. It really is. It has one setting. It really takes place in one room. It's a dinner party. It's a dinner party with a twist. If you haven't seen the film, go watch it. This is going to be an analysis of the film, a breakdown of the film, a plot discussion. Um, I really want to get into it because it's so cool and so well done. Rope has multiple meanings. So before we go any further, spoilers for this 80-year-old movie. Um, it's about a murder and a dinner party, all wrapped into one. Um, the Rope is the title, obviously. It's multiple meanings within the movie, and in fact, they make multiple references to things you can do with a rope. But uh, rope is used as the murder weapon. Rope is also the idea of a continuous loop, right? Or one long piece of rope is what the film is. It's one take. Now, Alfred Hitchcock used uh, different means to hide the cuts, but most takes are like 10 plus minutes, and you'll see the cuts. They'll go into somebody's back, and the screen goes black, and then they pull out. Um, but it's so well done, and it really shows the skill of filmmaking by Alfred Hitchcock, but also the quality of acting by the whole cast. And we're gonna meet the cast here in a minute. We're gonna break it all down. I'm gonna show you the cast. It's so cool, this movie. I can't recommend it enough. So let's jump right into it. So the opening scene, it's a murder. It's two guys kill a third man, and the idea is they want to perform the perfect murder. What is the ultimate perfect crime? Murder. And the two leads, well, Brandon is the crazy psycho sociopath. I mean, they're both obviously a bit crazy. Philip is the other murderer. Um, Now they have this idea instilled in them from when they were young, and we actually meet the quartermaster, their teacher from when they were young, and we get to see his perspective on this. Played by James Stewart as Rupert, so well, so well. James Stewart really commands the screen, and he is such a phenomenal actor. I guess I read somewhere that they didn't. It was a break from his typical character. He plays just a very, actually everybody in this movie is very intellectual. It's very good conversation that drives this movie. But Brandon almost wants to look at murder as art. So how can we make this artistic, this murder? So the basis of this movie, again, all one scene, one cut. If you didn't know any better, it looks like it is all done in one scene, one uncut, unedited scene. The camera pans, the camera moves around the room, the camera almost becomes its own character as it's following the different conversations around the room. But it takes place in real time. The movie's about 80 minutes. It's tight, it's quick, and it goes so fast, and it takes place in real time. So the movie's 80 minutes. We follow 80 minutes in this room. Opening scene is actually the only scene they're out of the room. We pan up, we hear a scream, we then cut inside the room. And at first I thought the film was a bit dark, but it makes sense because once they kill their victim, and we're going to meet everybody here in just a minute, they then place him in a chest, a box. It's big enough to be a table. They place him inside there, and the whole point is they want to have a dinner party with the body in the room, and that's the gist of the movie. That's the setup. So Brandon has invited multiple characters to join them for dinner, and that's basically the premise. Is we attend this dinner party with everybody, knowing full well that there's a body in the middle of the living room. Awesome, right? I think that's awesome. I think it's such a great setup. Let's jump over here and let's meet our characters, because it's not a dinner party without guests, right? So again, everybody in here is fantastic. But this is it. This is the whole cast right here. So we'll start with the four younger men. So we have David, who's our murder victim, Kenneth, Philip, and Brandon. Brandon and Philip are the killers. Oh, there's no mystery. Opening scene, they kill David with a rope, choking him. Brandon has invited all the other guests for dinner. So let's go through their relationships, okay? So the four guys over here, we have Brandon, Philip, Kenneth, and David. They all went to a real uppity, rich kid boarding school together. We're not told exactly what, but they probably went through, 12th grade, graduated before going to higher education. Maybe even their higher education, they went together. So they all know each other. They've grown up together. They are all friends to some degree. Then we have, actually, let's go Mr. Kentley down bottom corner there. Mr. Kentley is David's father. Brandon is sick. he wants this to be a challenge. He wants it to be intense. He likes this thrill, but he also views it as art. What they're doing, the whole murder. It's really. We'll get into the psychology of it and some of the social aspects and dynamics that are going on. So they invite Mr. Kentley. Now he's supposed to attend with his wife. However, his wife is sick. We get the impression that she has some sort of, she's always sick, right? It's always the cold, it's always this, it's always that. Instead, he brings his sister, Mrs. Atwater, along. Mrs. Atwater is fantastic. She is your grandma. She's a very nice lady. She doesn't remember names. Oh, so and so, he was in that movie about what's it's about with who and so, and very likable. She does some psychic palm readings. She's very, actually, she's very wrong but very right with the palm reading. She actually reads Philip's hands at one point. Does a palm reading. Says now Philip is a piano player, very talented. Again, they're very well-to-do individuals. Philip is. We learn that he's going to play a concert at, I believe, a town hall later in the year. Um, and he does play the piano throughout the evening at different points. Mrs. Atwater at one point reads his palms and says, "Oh, your hands are going to make you very famous someday." He, of course, takes that as, "I'm a killer. People are going to find out I'm a killer." Philip is a very paranoid individual. Um, Janet, lovely, lovely Janet. She is beautiful. I am very fond of this actress. Let me. Uh, it's worth mentioning her name. She's fantastic. Um, sorry, I should have had that up. Janet is played by Joan Chandler. Now, at this stage, when the movie takes place, she is David's fiance. But she has a history with both Kenneth, who she dated prior to David, and she even dated Brandon prior to dating Kenneth. So she's actually dated 3 of the 4 young men at this party. Definitely adds to some elements of strife, some give and take, some very interesting dynamics at play. Again, all put in place by Brandon, who is got this whole sick idea. But yes, Janet, fantastic actress, does such a good job. Then we have Mrs. Wilson. She is the housekeeper. She is the one serving the lunch. She's prepared the food. She's the help. She comes in and out. Very good character. She's very funny and kind of the keeps the boys grounded, keeps them on the right path, although she fails. And then we have Rupert. There he is over here. Sorry, Rupert. Again, he is the quartermaster of the school. He is the professor. He is the last one to show, the last one that Philip understands was invited. And Brandon invites him because he knows Rupert is very smart and will challenge them and will add a kink to the whole evening. And he certainly does just that. Played super cool. Very smart casting, all these characters. And they all have a history. They all know each other. Some awkward situations, certainly. Kenneth is kind of a pawn in all of this. He doesn't really understand. He's the first one to show up. He's a nice guy. He's really kind of put into a bad situation. But he tries to make the most of it. So yeah, the murder happens, like I said, opening scene, and then we just kind of follow the conversation throughout the evening as the characters show up and talk. Some very cool references are made in this movie. One that caught my attention, it was a story from, anybody my age will remember Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, or More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. In one of those, they had the stories weren't that scary, but they had the absolute scariest artwork. And if anybody remembers, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But they do bring up a story that was I remember from those books, and that was the story of the bride who, on her wedding day, they're playing, after the ceremony, they're having a game of hide and seek. And she goes up to the attic or wherever and hides herself in a chest that latches itself. And they can't find her. And whatever, 40, 50 years later, they're moving out of the house. They open the chest and they find the skeleton of the bride in her wedding gown still. They tell that story, and they tell other stories. Brandon is always hinting, pushing the envelope. And Rupert is always, The whole thing is David is supposed to be at this dinner. and he hasn't shown up yet. I mean, he doesn't show up. Obviously, he's already there. Um, so everybody, Mr. Kentley is David's father. He's concerned about the situation, and tensions grow, and Rupert gets more and more suspicious. Um, some of the conversation they have is so relevant today. They speak of Nietzsche ideas, right? Of the Superman. Brandon believes he is a superior individual. Um, I think also Alfred Hitchcock invented the Purge. Um, the films, the Purge that are so popular now. That's all taken from this movie. I swear to God, it is. Um, Basically, Brandon believes that there are elites in society, supermen, superhumans, super intellectuals that are superior. They should be priority, basically, in life. They should be able to murder as art. Not only Rupert put all the ideas into their head when they were younger. Rupert, early in the film, he starts talking about basically Malthus. I read Malthus back in college. The population control idea that once a population reaches a certain level, everybody starts to suffer because there's not enough resources to go around. Um, Rupert and Brandon, there's conversations about, if we could have a kill day where one day a year we kill, murder X amount of people. Or 1 week we have a stab week where we go around and we stab multiple people. And then the moral conversation comes up between, of course, Janet, Mrs. Atwater. They all chime in. Well, who makes the decision? Who gets to kill these people? Who gets killed versus who does not get killed? And Brandon, we could solve all of the world's problems if we did this. But who would make that decision? And well, I would. The intellectuals would. And we do it as art. It would be just as much art as music or as a painting. And this idea is very scary, uh, obviously, but it's kind of relevant, right? The elites making the decision on who lives and who dies, what cultures survive, what people survive, what resources are used for, who gets those resources. And, you know, he says we can solve not only hunger and, you know, disease by doing this, but I can also get front row to the theater without an issue if I were able to kill a few people as well that were in my way. So, and Rupert does explains this all as a theory. He obviously, it comes up later. He's like, you twisted my ideas, and they weren't meant for practice. They were all meant as a theoretical mental exercise, not to be perverted into this real life situation. Um, and basically, all that conversation is going on discussing this while this is this is happening. This movie is all taking place. Um, Again, it's very very interesting ideas, and way ahead of its time. Um, yeah, it's mind blowing to think that Alfred Hitchcock was thinking these ideas and coming up with this narrative in 1948. Um, anyway, as the story progresses, obviously David gets, or people are missing David more and more. Where is he? He should be here. He's never late for anything. He's always the first to show. He's a very reliable person, etc. And Brandon keeps pushing the envelope, dropping little hints about what they've done. One point telling how Philip strangled chickens at the farm, and then but Philip keeps getting more and more paranoid, worried more and more about they're gonna find out. They're gonna know. He breaks a glass at one point on his hand, and he's bleeding because he's so anxious and nervous. Um, they actually set the table for with all their dinner and everything on David's body. So he's inside this long table chest, and we'll jump back up here. So he's on this. They put him in a chest, like a long um, box, a casket in theory. And they cover it with a tablecloth, and they put the candles on it, and they serve their meat and dishes and everything on there. And that was one of the things that raises suspicion as well, is that uh, they moved everything. They have a nice dining room, and the the um the housekeeper has to move everything out of the dining room into here and move all the books out of the living area into the dining room. And she mentions that at one point to Rupert. Again, that's another puzzle piece that's clicking for him. And so they kind of go through all this conversation, but Rupert is getting more and more suspicious and more suspicious. Um, it eventually comes to a point where the dinner party's over. Well, before we talk about the rest of the movie there, let's talk about the backdrop because the backdrop is so cool. They have it's like an interactive matte painting that they use. So the whole exterior out because behind them is all this big window, and it's an exterior shot of Manhattan, and there's smoke billowing up and there's signs flashing, but it's a matte painting. Like you tell immediately it's a matte painting, especially in 4K. But it's so well done. And as the 80 minutes rolls on, it dims. It starts getting nighttime and the lights start coming on and like just the effort that they put in. They could have made it all during the day and just left it, but Hitchcock added that element. So as the movie progresses, the sun's setting and that matte painting gets darker and darker and more lights come on. And there's eventually a neon sign that comes on out of the window to the right. And it's just so cool. Um, and Hitchcock's use of dialogue to build suspense. Again, there's no gore. There's no a drop of blood, and well, there's I guess 2 drops of blood. Couple cut hands is all. No, there's no violence. There's no um anything like that. It was all done through just dialogue. Um, the 2 main characters as well. The 2 murderers. They are definitely uh, there's homosexual undertones. Don't get me wrong; they are definitely gay. Uh, Obviously, in 1948, you could not talk about that. You could not say that. You cannot come right out and say it. But it's clear that that was what Hitchcock was leaning for. We've got Philip and we've got Brandon. They live together. They travel together. They're going up to the farm for the weekend together. Um, Very again progressive. It's challenging to the viewer, especially in 1948. Probably flew over many people's heads, but it's clearly to society now that understands that is just normal. It, it's very obvious, but in 1948, that was really put. I mean, this is a time when you couldn't even show a toilet. Remember, Alfred Hitchcock broke that norm in Psycho, I believe it was, when he showed. They said you can't show a toilet on TV. He shows a toilet. Um, so again, pushing the envelope with that, and I think it's amazing to see how progressive Hitchcock was at the time. I think that's awesome. Um, they yeah, so eventually everybody leaves for the dinner party. Basically, the dad, actually, they give him a stack of books and they tie up the rope. They use the rope to tie up the books that they're giving to David's father to take home. Uh, and again, Brandon thinks this is all art, part of the show. It's his masterpiece, basically. But Rupert is getting really suspicious, and the thing that really tips him off is at the end, or close to the end, he's leaving, and he asks for his hat. And the housekeeper goes and gets a hat and puts it on his head, and he's like, he takes it off. He's like, "That's not my hat," but it has David's initials in it. So at that stage, he knows David's been here. So they all leave and leave the two killers alone. At that stage, the housekeeper leaves and says, "You boys have a great weekend at the farm," and they're left alone. The two murderers, which Philip and Brandon, are left alone. And then the phone rings, and guess who wants to come back up to the room? But Rupert says, "I left my cigarette case up there. I need to go get my cigarette case. Can I come up?" So he comes up, and he's got a cigarette case in his pocket, and he hides it in the room so he can look for it. And they start asking him, well, if you were to do what we talked about earlier, murder as art, and Rupert starts putting all the pieces together at this stage. And then they said, "Well, what would you do with the body?" He said, "Well, I'd take it out, and I'd hide it in the car till we could get rid of it." He says, "Well, I can't take it out during the day. I must be in here." And at that stage, actually, before we get to that stage, Brandon has a pistol on him. And Rupert he calls him out. He's like, "Why else would you have that pistol in your pocket if it wasn't for, somebody to find out what you've done?" And he tosses the pistol. He's like, "Oh, that's nothing. We're going up to the farm. There's been some break-ins up there, and I just take it for protection." So at that point, Rupert grabs the pistol, opens the chest, sees the dead body, finds out the gig is up at this stage. He actually opens the window and he starts firing the gun out the window. Boom, boom, fires like 3 shots out the window. And this, then you hear people outside. "Was that gunshots? Call the police." Blah blah blah. Then you hear the sirens coming, and that's the end. Rupert sits down with the pistol. Brandon pours himself a drink because he knows, this is it. He's going away, and Philip sits there totally defeated. Philip, uh, it's interesting because it seems like he didn't want to do this throughout. He gets very paranoid throughout. Yet at the beginning, it's shown he's the one that actually does the strangulation. He's got the rope. He's the one doing the murder. So Brandon is kind of the master manipulator. He's the mastermind. He's trying to pull all the strings, but he's not as clever as a puppet master as he thought. So again, I can't recommend this movie enough. You already it's one of those things. Even if there's not really a surprise in it, right? It's just from the very outset what has happened. It's just a matter of how will it resolve. And I hadn't seen this movie in, I don't know, I want to say about 7-8 years. I saw it once ever. I was into the whole long shots. The opening scene of Boogie Nights was one of my favorites, that tracks in, goes through the streets, into the club, to the dance floor, everybody's dancing, follows it back to the kitchen, and we see Mark Wahlberg as the dishwasher. Always a big fan of those long shot scenes. I've got 1917. If you haven't seen that, that's an amazing film. I haven't seen it on my new 4K setup yet. I do have it in 4K. Very much looking forward to watching that one. But I love the long takes. the artistic ability that it takes, the acting chops of these people. It's so well played by everybody. Um, just jump back over to the cast again. Everybody is so much fun in this movie. Not fun. Everybody is so it's so well acted. They're so believable. Mrs. Atwater is fun. Don't get me wrong. Mrs. Wilson is actually very fun too. Mr. Kentley is a very concerned and dour. Kenneth is the unsuspecting, kind of the blonde goof. Um, and then Rupert is just the genius. So yeah, I really like it. Even if you know how it ends, it doesn't matter. Go along for the ride that is Rope, that is Alfred Hitchcock's. I don't know. Like in my mind, Psycho's number one, and then is it Rope or North by Northwest? North by Northwest is really fun. It's got a lot of adventure to it. It's got some great sets, some great cinematography. Rope is a whole different monster, and that's what I like about it so much is that Hitchcock shows such diverse directing and writing and acting chops with his characters. Like there's no other movie like this really that has just it's again with my limited storytelling. We did Duel the other night. This is right there with it. It is so damn good. So check it out. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your comments. Have you seen Rope? What's your favorite Hitchcock movie? Leave the comments below. Like and subscribe. I really appreciate you guys watching. And we'll talk to you next time.